And now we kind of start dealing with the meat of the book a little bit. Of course, we can't deal with every detail just because of the way this is structured, time-wise, and people are busy and so on and so forth. So we try to take what's most important. So in this section, we're going to be dealing with the issue of tahara, and that encompasses water and purification. We're not going to get into details which are not extremely relevant. We're going to take out what's most important. So we're going to cover 4 things, hopefully today in this short time. The significance of tahara overall in the deen, the meaning of the word tahara in the Arabic language, and then we're going to study some ayat of the Quran or an ayat of the Quran and some hadith of the Quran and Sunnah as it relates to issues of tahara, and then the types of water that are used. Really the rulings that pertain to the water. So what we're looking at is we're looking for some terms. Most of the knowledge of the deen is going to come back to some issue of action outside. Even Aqidah is going to obligate us to some action. So terminology in Sharia is very important. And I want to take like about a minute to talk about this point. Dr. Ismail Faruqi, rahmatullahi alayhi, was one of the early pioneers in Islamic knowledge in North America. One of the things that he recognized was the issue of language. And he had wrote a very small book. It's called Toward Islamic English. And Dr. Taha Jabir, both of them passed away, rahmatullahi alayhi. Dr. Ismail Faruqi was actually murdered in his house. And some suspect there was some political play with that. But he was a Palestinian activist, and he used to be involved on the political side very heavy. And then he focused a lot on the knowledge issue, on Islamic knowledge and the issue of reviving Islam. And he was one of the most confident Muslims in the academic scene. A lot of Muslims, they go into the academy and it's just like they conform to whatever's in the university. So he went into the university and he started changing the direction, and he actually had an international impact. And I don't know if I mentioned this here before, but in other places I have. Actually, the whole system of education in Malaysia is impacted by him, Dr. Taha Jabir, and Sayyid Naqib al-Attas. And they realized that there was a major problem in the way that we're educating people. We separate knowledge of deen, knowledge of dunya. So people in the dunya, they act one way, and then with Islam, everybody in the masjid is, mashallah, focused. So that was one of the first things. Another thing that they noticed, and this was carrying from the legacy of the past, that in the past, in the colonial period, when these university systems came into the Muslim world, that was the means by which they changed the Muslims. And then now we get to the point that's important here, the issue of terminology. Actually, when we start talking about terminology, we're talking about language, and we're talking about scientific language. Islamic sciences are scientific. It may not be biology and chemistry, but it's systematic. No one arrives at a position in Islamic knowledge without having to go through some sort of process. Principles and evidences have to be put forward. And it's not just a matter of quoting a hadith and so on and so forth. It's a process. So part of the issue of Islamic knowledge is the issue of the language. And the issue of the language, especially the Arabic language, has been a point of debate for a while now. Mostly the colonization of the mind. We know what we're talking about by the colonization of the mind. What we're talking about is that the changing in the Muslim thinking, it came through the language. And so, for instance, a lot of the doubts that began to appear, at least in the Arabic-speaking world, it came through the Arabic Studies department. Why? Because the people that were being trained to teach in those departments, they were reading the literature from Britain and the literature from here and the literature from there. And it was a different orientation towards life, right? It's like there's certain movies that you watch, certain movies that you don't watch. And some types of movies that you watch, they have, if you notice, if you look at them, you're like, this is not appropriate, so to speak. It impacts your character. And so they began to change the language. And so even now, this is one of the issues with Muslims. Like when it comes to the terminology of Islam, we're not clear on what it means. Right? But everybody will know the formula in mathematics. Everybody will know the meaning of a verb and grammar and a noun and all of this. But when it comes to like the terminology, we don't have an understanding. And so that's important. I wanted to take that to say a moment to say that it is very important to understand the way that scholars are using terms. Especially when we start dealing with issues of Aqidah. We had that in the other class in Tafsir. People throw around the word nifaq and kufr and this and that. And haram, we mentioned that. We use those terms very loosely. And it impacts our actions. So here, what we're studying in this book are terms to talk about basic actions. And unfortunately, the book is only dealing with the arkan of Islam. It's not dealing with anything beyond that. It's not even dealing with Aqidah. It's mostly dealing with Salah and Siyam and Zakah and Hajj. And then, so for instance, in this case, in the case of Tahara, there's some words, like the meaning of the word Tahara. Some terms, we need to know those so we can perform the act of Tahara. What is the purpose for the act of Tahara? What are the evidence for the act of Tahara? And, what are the different classifications for the action of Tahara? And then how do we do it? That gives us an overall framework. So now, the significance of Tahara overall. Here, this is extremely important because usually, a lot of times, when we talk about the word Tahara, which basically, it means, it means cleanliness, right? It means cleanliness, right? But it's not just any type of cleanliness. It's not just like one specific type of cleanliness. And so, before getting into the detailed meanings of that, what is the significance of Tahara overall? And so the Shaykh, he mentions here regarding why do we begin with the study of Tahara? Munasabat al-Bada' bi-Tahara. He says because the ahadith that are established, that clarify, here basically the arkan of Islam, they begin with Salah. When we talk about the pillars of Islam, after Tawheed, we talk about Salah. So, and then Zakah, and then fasting, and then Hajj, right? And then he mentions the hadith, ultimately, that's narrated by Imam Ahmed, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, أن النبي قال مفتاح الصلاة الطهور والطهور. So, this hadith itself, remember when we said, there's nothing in our thinking, we have to have some proof of how we got to this point, of why we're thinking what we're thinking with regard to the practice of Islam. And it's not just the issue of just accept it, right? The scholars, they investigate. So when they investigate, one of the things that they realize, before we could talk about the arkan of Islam, nobody from a young person to an old person is going to deny the arkan of Islam. Everybody knows that. But then it's like, that's fine. It's basic knowledge. We have proof of that. We have a hadith that talk about the concept of the arkan of Islam. But then it becomes like, what is the relationship between Tahara and Salah? So we have a hadith which tells us that the key to the Salah, right, is the issue here when we come back to pure water. Pure water. Right? And then even the Quran here, لِيُطَهِّرَكُمْ بِهِ. Right? And so here, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is talking about the descending of rain. That the purpose of the descending of rain, is for purification. Now, the thing about it is that in the ayah, and we'll come to it, it's not only just talking about hygiene. Now, that's the beautiful thing about Islam. It's not just talking about hygiene. And this is important. Why? Because if a person comes out, and this is something we have to get used to, if a person comes out and they have like the dhikr beads, and it's like, subhanallah, la ilaha illallah, lowering the gaze, then that becomes like, this person is focusing on their iman, or they're focusing on their tahad. But then it gets, make 1,000 dhikrs. Sit in the corner, make 1,000 dhikrs. Then it becomes what? Well, forget about dunya. That's not the concept of tahara in the deen. All of the arkan of Islam, the objective, the maqsid of it is tahara. All of it at the end of the day. So the deen itself, when it's properly practiced, it brings tahara. Is that, sometimes when we don't properly practice the deen, we have issues with ourselves. When we don't properly practice the salah, we don't take the spiritual benefit. Tahara is purification. No. I said tahara. Yeah. I mentioned tahara. And so the Quran and the Sunnah, they give us a whole meaning. That's important. They give us a whole meaning. So one of the things that he brings up, and I don't want to, because there's so much material to cover, I don't want to get caught up too deep, is that he says, الطهارة لها أربع مراتب. That he says there's 4 different levels to tahara. Right? 4 different levels. One is purification from those things which invalidate our wudu and our state of purity, like with the issue of ghusl. And then those things like which are najis. We all know najis, that which is considered filth. Najis has a specific definition though. Right? Najis is what the Sharia declares as najis, and some things may be debated. Like for instance, alcohol, whether it's pure or not pure. Some things are clear as najis, and then some things is debated a little bit. But here for our intensive purposes, we know that when we go to the bathroom or the lavatory or the restroom, whatever you want to call it, that we have a natural process that we engage in. So either we're going to be urinating or either we're going to be defecating. One or two. And so that's considered najasa. So that that's part of cleanliness. So that's the first type, which is called external tahara. It's tahara that's manifest. You're cleaning that which, when we limit it to that, when you go to the bathroom, it's clear that you need to clean yourself, right? And then there is تطهير الجوارح من الجرائم والآثام, right? So purifying our limbs, may Allah grant us that reality, purifying our limbs, this is a higher level now, a more deeper level, from acts that are acts of aggression towards the Sharia or towards other human beings, crimes, and sins. So that here the word jawarih is important because it's basically saying, is almost kind of giving the idea that our body is like an instrument. Our eyes are an instrument, right? Our hands are an instrument, our legs are an instrument, our ears are an instrument. The whole of the body is an instrument. And it can be used in the halal or the haram. When you rent a car, what happens when you take it back? What? Huh? What do they do to the car? They inspect, they look at your license or whatever, the contract. They look at the miles, they see everything that happened. If the miles are too high, did you go out of state? Even before they ask you what's the use, they get very specific sometimes. Are you keeping this car here? What's the purpose of business? All that type of stuff. Because they want to take an account. And so the issue is that's how we have to think about ourselves to a certain extent. Not that we're things, because we shouldn't think of human beings as things. But we should think about it from the angle that, look, everything is, until we get to a point of ihsan, that we're accounted for every single thing. We forget that. At the mawqif al-ghafla, that's the position to be, basically absent-minded, almost neglectful, right? And that's the lifestyle that we live in. This lifestyle is one of ghafla. Basically, nobody has time to really stop and smell the roses, as they say. You even feel guilty. In this society, the feeling that you get is that if you're still, there's something wrong. When it's like, in order to have a healthy life, spiritually, mentally, you have to be still sometimes. Even in corporate America, the CEOs, it took them a long time to say, we neglected the purpose of rest because constant busyness. So that's, reflecting on the higher reality, And then here, now we come into the تطهير القلب من الأخلاق المذمومة. So purifying the heart from those characteristics, right, that are blameworthy, that are not nice in the deen. One of the things about the word khuluq is that we also say khalq. And Imam al-Tirmidhi rahmatullahi alayhi, and he has a book, it's called the Shama'il. Basically, Imam al-Tirmidhi compiled a hadith in which he talks about he talks about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so the word khuluq and khalq is together, right? The root between the two words, I should say, is together. So the way the Prophet looked, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is one thing, and then the way the Prophet presented himself and his character is another thing. So here, the tahara is from that too. This is an issue. We talked about the issue of language, how the change of the Muslims came to language. Really, it brought a change in their fikr. But this is also an issue. You can have good Muslims. I've seen this. Muslims that pray, they give zakat and everything. But when it comes to business, khalas, there's a problem. But that's because they learned that. They learned in the system. They learned the idea of rishwa, of bribery. I can't get my right unless I pay you to get it. Right? Because there's no system. It's a messed up environment. So even in this society, 20 years ago in this society, what you're seeing now, you would never see. 30 years ago in this society, what you're seeing now, you wouldn't see. You would see other issues. Like, this society has always been racist from the beginning. It's a colonial settler society, no different than Palestine. It established itself in that way. That's why there's not much word about what takes place in Palestine. I take responsibility for what I say. But it's a reality because it established itself by stealing the land from the indigenous people. Right? And that's even so much so historically, Hitler studied American society. It wasn't the opposite. Hitler studied this society and built his system on that. And so, but still, there's good, there's bad. In every society, there's good, there's bad. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayhi, he mentions that. He kind of makes it like the soul. You have the soul, you have that person which their self, their nafs, is always talking to them about evil. And they listen completely. Then you have that soul that it has some conscience. Don't do that. It's haram. Like, even if they fall into sins, there's something inside that's warning them not to do it. And then you have that soul, just in a simple way, there's more classifications, but then you have that soul, an-nafs al-mutama'inna, that is tranquil, is at a state of peace. All of those three states is, what is our relationship to Allah? So Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, he uses that and he says, you have the society, which is a society which is completely satanic. It just listens to shaitan and everything. And then you have the society, which, it has some amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar in it. And then you have the society, that's like Jannah, or the society that's closer to Jannah on earth. So, the issue of the akhlaq, this is what we're seeing. A change in the akhlaq. Did you guys hear about the shooting today? Yeah. So that in this society has become the norm. So they want to blame the guns, say it's the guns. Yemen had more guns per square foot, with people. Everyone in Yemen had a gun before the madness took place in recent times. But all that, going into school and killing people and all that wasn't part. No, there's a sickness. There's the issue the issue of tahara at that level needs. This is the last point, right? Tathhir sir amma siwa Allah. ta'ala. That our inner souls, our hearts, that deep person who we are, that, we have a relationship with Allah, not being from shirk. The problem with all of this, when you start talking about waswasa and all of that, we don't talk about that, but, obeying our nafs on a constant basis, can become like a form of shirk. And the Quran indicates that,
Excuse me. When you are saying tahara, tahara translates into two things: cleansingness of body and soul.
yes.
So where it coming from? That we are talking about the body, but not the soul. How you do it through that?
No, that's a limited understanding. You're right. What you're saying is the Islamic understanding.
Yeah. And you are teaching Islamic understanding.
We're saying that the meaning of tahara, because here we have another hadith, at-tuhur shatrul iman, that purification is a branch of iman. So the beautiful thing about the hadith of the 77 branches of iman, that hadith teaches us that there's so many different aspects to iman. Like, for instance, if I see, if say for instance, if you have a problem and I come and are you okay? That's from iman, right? Say for instance, there's something in the way and I come and I move it so it doesn't bother the people. That's from iman, right? Salamu alaikum. That's from iman. How are you doing, brother? That's from iman, smiling. So, for instance, in the hadith, it teaches that iman is mostly everything that the Prophet Muhammad did as a person, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so, for instance, here, when we start talking about iman also, that part of it is yani tahara. But what is the meaning of tahara? We're saying it has all these different levels. It's not just cleanliness. It's not just hygiene. If we talk about hygiene, this society has hygiene. This society has hygiene. There was a time when you could say, well, the non-Muslims, they didn't clean themselves, this and that. The French, they come up with these little toilet things so that they can clean their bodies when they go to the bathroom. You know what I'm saying? You have cleanliness. You go to a Starbucks bathroom, they make sure that it's clean. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite now. You go to the Muslim world, or you go to a Muslim restaurant sometimes, and the bathrooms are nasty and dirty. Right? But does that take away from the Muslim is a muwahhid? At this level, the Muslim still, is with Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. But, because of other issues, you find that we lose out on the mental and the physical cleanliness.
Do you think that our community of Muslims needs to be trained in all these levels?
Yes, that's why the book doesn't have this. I took this from another book and I just left it in Arabic because of that reason. Because we don't understand tahara in that way. We don't understand tahara in a way that's mafhum al-hadari. It's a civilizational understanding. That it's on every level, that how we understand tahara is not just hygiene. It's not just hygiene. Right? And it's not just the issue. Some people focus tawheed, cleanliness from shirk, no shirk, no shirk. But then with the issue of akhlaq, forget it. And then this is important. The issue, no society, actually, this book, this is a Sharh Bulugh al-Maram, is an explanation of Bulugh al-Maram. But the person who wrote this book, he's a qadi. Living, it was living actually, he's not living now, but he was living recently. So, personally, I like to read that type of stuff because he's a qadi. He's not just like a mufti or sheikh, he's a qadi. So he's dealing with people when he's making the qada, he's making judgments. So the way he constructs this book and the way he writes is usually from that angle. It's tatbiq ad-din. It's the implementation of the deen. It's not talking about just theory. Because we talk like theory. You know, the deen for us is theory right now. So so this is part, this is part of revival of the deen. Nobody is perfect. Two questions recently, two different people asked. One is an older brother. He's an older brother. He's been Muslim for a long time. And we were talking about the issue of arbitration, how we get to that point. And then another brother, we're talking about the problem of leadership in the Muslim community, and really at the end of the day is the issue of education. But not just any type of education, not just we come in and we get facts and then we leave out. That's not the Islamic education. Right? That's what has happened to us. That's not Islamic education. Look, when did we have more who fathered the Quran? Now or in the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? What's the condition of the ummah now? Yeah. So we have who fathered the Quran. We have, mashallah, al-qira'at, and every reciting beautifully. You know what I'm saying? But when it comes to the reality of that, and it's not to be negative. Look, if a doctor comes and tells you you have cancer, and the doctor is coming and telling you have cancer because of this reason, and the doctor tells you, you can go to another doctor and get a second opinion. We advise you to go get a second opinion. And you go to the second doctor, and the second doctor says, yeah, maybe it's not to the same degree, but you have cancer. You don't sit there and tell the doctor, don't be negative. It is what it is. So then you have to ask you, then from there is like the question, do you take the medicine or you don't take the medicine? And that's where we're at in the ummah. Do we take the medicine or we don't take the medicine? No, the question is that we have to, that's what we have to decide for ourselves. Look, the Sahaba, and I mentioned this before from the minbar, the Sahaba, sometimes they used to come to Salah drunk. Don't give me this issue of being perfect and like a wali. Sometimes they will come to the Salah drunk. Some of them will come in the middle of Ramadan and tell the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I violated Ramadan. You were not dealing with perfect people, but you were dealing with people that had sincerity. That's the difference. They were people that had issues. They were not perfect. They had issues and they had sincerity, and also they didn't have like we go, on the internet and we get all the collection 1,000 ahadith at one time on a particular issue of tahara. They didn't have all of that. But the way that they understood the deen, they understood it. They understood what they were obligated. They practiced. They implemented. But with understanding. With understanding, that's the thing about it. They implemented with understanding. And another thing is they believed in the jama'ah. They believed in the jama'ah of the believers. Right now, people, they learn the deen, they practice. And immediately they want to correct everybody, but they don't believe in the jama'ah. They don't believe in the jama'ah. You see what I'm saying? It's like you learn the deen, but you don't believe in the jama'ah. So the deen is just for you to practice by yourself. Jama'ah, the community. We're supposed to be bringing each other up. So that's the issue of akhlaq. So he says that the lowest level, the most crude level, is to believe in this level of tahara, just the purification from that which is najasa, and from that which needs what the wudu. Yani that's what we call tahara hukmiyah, from the issue of wudu. The issue of what invalidates your wudu, tahara from that. So in brief, so here the definition of tahara, he gives two definitions. One, the linguistic definition, purification and cleanliness. That's the hygiene part. That's the having the nice part. And you know what? Shah Wali Allah rahmatullahi alayhi, he has some ideas about this, and this is important. Tahara is important even for our mental health. If we're depressed and we're down, we should look at how our environment is. Is it organized? Is it clean? You know, even the whole issue of smelling good, it lifts your spirits. And that's from the Sunnah. If you feel depressed, that's part of it. It's like part of the medicine. You know, and even the whole issue of he mentioned like getting wudu, refreshing your wudu, makes you feel fresh again. Because life is stressful, right? Life is extremely stressful. And you find that sometimes that's the case. Mental health sometimes is associated with the issue of cleanliness. You know, people get depressed, they get down. What happens? They stop taking care of themselves. You know, and a lot of this, sometimes I'm going to say something, this is like brother to brother talk. Sometimes we like when the women look good, wives and stuff like that, they take care of themselves. But sometimes we don't take care of ourselves. And we have to realize that the akhlaq, the character in this society, it changed. So now everybody's eyes looking. Both men and women looking. Because that's the nature of this society. This society, the nature of it is that. But the men also, you have to make sure that you present yourself in the right way to the sisters. So then the other issue here is purification to obtain a state of ritual purity. This in the ulama across the madhab, they debate about the whole issue of the intention. If you make intention to make wudu so that you can make salat sunnah, can you use that wudu for fard? You can't, because you intended with that wudu something that's lesser in obligation than what is obligated. The fard is obligated. Let's clarify it. Huh?
Intention of, as you are saying, wudu, plus if I do it, okay, I am doing it for farz and sunnah both. Then what?
That's different. You said fard and sunnah both.
So this is your intention from inside. Okay, I have to go for namaz.
Yeah.
Like I'm coming over here.
Right.
So I'm not going to jump over there after sunnah to go and do wudu.
Oh no, but sometimes some people may say I have to make salat istikhara.
Oh, that's different. It's entirely different namaz. But this one, when you have got sunnah and then you followed by the sunnah, it's farz. So you are not going to do it twice.
The point being here is that the intention to do wudu or ghusl to obtain the state of purity.
Yeah.
State of purity is by the Sharia.
Yeah.
Right? The Sharia says when it is that you have to make wudu. The Sharia says when it is that you have to make ghusl. That's a better intention, not to specify it to that extent, right? But the point of saying that is that you'll find, I don't want you guys to get confused. You find one book says this, the other book says that, but to just make the intention to be in a state of purity, according to the Sharia, you can read Quran, you can come into the masjid, you can pray salat, you can make dhikr, whatever. You know what I'm saying? What you can with that basically. You removed that which stops you from acts of ibadah. You have the intention to remove that which stops you from any act of ibadah. That is one of the best definitions of the intention, of how to make the intention. Because sometimes the scholars, they get into debates. Sometimes you have to know how to work with that. Sometimes the scholars get into debates, it's academic scholarship, but when it comes to practice, sometimes some things are easier to practice than other things. Let's not get confused with that issue. Is that sometimes, what is the best way to understand it? Well, this is one of the best definitions. to obtain a state of ritual purity or remove anything which creates an obstacle from you engaging in ibadah. And then with that, you can use that wudu or, for anything. Because the intention, okay, for instance, when you take a bath, some people take a bath, the way they take a bath is the same way they make ghusl. Same way they make ghusl is the same way they take a bath. Some people are so specific that they have it measured out how much water they're going to use to follow the sunnah to that level. The exact amount of water that should be used, they use exactly that. Okay, what makes the difference between taking a bath and making ghusl?
When you are doing bath
And
and wudu,
ghusl.
you are just cleaning your whole body.
I know, but what makes the difference? Okay, but what if you take a bath the same way that you do ghusl? Yeah. So what's the difference between the two?
In ghusl, you are doing wudu followed by bath followed by wudu. Just the cleanliness of the body. Okay.
The intention. The intention. You may be working in construction or farming or whatever, or the air conditioner broke down in your office. You go to the bathroom. You're doing the same thing as wudu. So, but if you didn't intend, that's important, because in the Hanafi madhab, sometimes the way that they look at certain things here in this case is more like cleanliness. But in the other madhab, they look at that as an act of ibadah. It's not just a hygiene issue. And ghusl is very important to understand that, you know what I'm saying? Because like in the Hanafi madhab, and it's not to down the madhab, but it's to say we want to get a complete picture, right? So we want to look at how it is that the scholars overall understand this. In the Hanafi madhab, say for instance, if we go to the beach, if we're at the beach, say, come on, Yusuf, let's go to the beach. And then you say, I'll race you to the water. So we're running, so doosh, come into the water, and then I just go into the water, or to the swimming pool. I dip into the swimming pool in its entirety. I hit the bottom of the floor, come back up. I have wudu in the Hanafi madhab. Intention, no intention, I have wudu. Yes. That's how the Hanafi understands it. Which is not bad. It's not bad. But what we're saying is that we want to also have an understanding of wudu is an act of ibadah for the other scholars. It's not just cleanliness. Because the Hanafis look at it from the angle as a preparation for ibadah, which is not bad. It's two different ways of thinking, but what we're focusing on here is having the intention. Because the tricky part is not that. The tricky part is we can talk about that, but we can make it clear. We can say, well, you have to have intention. But the tricky part is when you make ghusl. When you make ghusl, like say for instance, if you need to make ghusl on Yawm al-Jum'ah, and you want to come to Jum'ah, and you know that it's sunnah to what? To make ghusl for Jum'ah. And you intend to make ghusl for Jum'ah, and you have to make ghusl for what? From janaba. So that doesn't work. You have to have, if you make ghusl for the janaba, you intend that, then automatically you have the ghusl for sunnah. But because they're really, the way in the understanding of the Hanafi is cleanliness, so that you don't come stinky to the masjid, right? So that you don't smell in the masjid. Always that which is more important in priority, it covers that which is less. So if you make ghusl for janaba, it's going to cover the ghusl for what? You can your primary intention is that, but it can fall back on the issue of okay, you have ghusl for
That's for in all madhab, right?
technically, yeah, technically in that
The
sense.
other example that you mentioned, all you have to do is just run this water, on your body and
For wudu, for wudu,
for wudu, yes.
yeah,
Just like taking a dip in the swimming pool, come out.
yeah. You can pray, which is not bad for kids. Is good.
But that's true for all madhab, or is just for Hanafi?
That one to go into the pool and you jump into the pool and you have wudu, that's for Hanafi school. But that for children is good. For children is good, because for children, it's okay, fine. But some people may not like this. They say, oh, he's messing up the Hanafi madhab. But we're talking about tarbiyat al-qalb, to know how to work with the intention when we're doing actions. And so we're saying, we want an understanding which is clear across the board. On some things is okay, fine, clear madhab. You have a madhab, the Hanafi madhab, this how, we're talking about that, how it's understood, and the madhab is this way. But some things we need to realize that we need to have a general understanding that unites us as Muslims. Like for instance, if I come into the masjid, you see these socks? If I come into the masjid, I have to make wudu, go to the bathroom. There's people in the masjid that will say, I'm not praying behind that person. Why? Yeah. But, for instance, that position, it can be attributed to Ibn Taymiyyah. Sheikh Jamaluddin al-Qasimi wrote a whole book on it with evidences proving that it's, by definition, is okay. But because the majority, the majority, they have issues with that. It becomes, some things in the fiqh, it can create a clash between the Muslims.
It depends on circumstances also.
Yes.
Where you have got availability also of the water or cleanliness where you are in the office or somewhere where you
That's because you realize adaptability is important.
yeah.
But some people say the rule is the only thing that's important, regardless of the situation, which is not bad because it brings discipline, but we have to have both. Like if you're on an airplane, you coming in as a Muslim like this, and it's clear that you're a Muslim, and you go to the bathroom on the airplane, and you pass gas, so you need to make wudu. So you go into the airplane bathroom, everybody's already looking at you as it is, or you're at the airport, in the airport bathroom, for you to come and stick your foot in the sink and all of that, it may not be appropriate. I may do that at 7-Eleven. You understand what I'm saying? I may do that at 7-Eleven. I may do that at Starbucks bathroom. But I'm not going to do that in the airport bathroom. Not right now. And that's not me being scared. That's me understanding the dynamics. We had a whole bunch of imams that got taken out of their flight. I had that experience where I got barred from not being able to get on a flight. Because the situation is now that if somebody doesn't like you, they just complain and they come and pull you off of the airplane. So, or the situation like you're in the bathroom, in the airport bathroom, you in that small space which is dirty anyway. Because some people, they're not sitting down to go to the bathroom, they're urinating all over the place. Sorry for the example, but it's true. And so now you can think you're gonna be in that type of bathroom, cleaning and making. So then what are you gonna say? Oh, well, wait till your flight finishes to make the salah. So it's a hard circumstance. So you have to choose. Now the discipline comes, okay, fine. Majority of the Muslims don't practice that. So have respect for them. If you see they don't practice, don't make that a big deal. But it's allowable in the deen. You see what I'm saying? You understand. The important thing is to understand systematically. And then you understand where what they call the rukhas is. Where it is that you can take a a easier opinion. But you have to understand systematically. So here, salah is a precondition. We already dealt with the issue of intention. The general intention to remove all of those obstacles is the most important thing, right? Remove the obstacles that stop us from engaging in active ibadah. So here then, salah is a precondition of the, wudu is a precondition of the salah. So then here, we talked about that. Purification is more than just purification of things. It's purification of when it comes to salah, it's purification of the clothes, the face, the body. I separated this out from practice because this can get confused. The two can get confused. Why? Because if you're a father and your child urinates on you, do you have to make wudu? Yeah, some people get confused. So just cleaning the body. But now if you're a father, your child urinated on you, and you went to the bathroom, do you have to make wudu? So
It's not dependent on your child. It could be somebody else's child.
Or somebody else's child, yeah.
If the urine drop comes in contact with your body, we just wash it off.
Right? So there's the clothes, the body, and the practice. But the same thing with the heart. Right? So it's needed. So salah itself, it needs purification from taking place. And the evidence, is go back to the hadith. Yani that miftahu salah is tahur. That the key to the salah is that, purification with water, so on and so forth. So you have two types of tahara. Let's simplify it now. We talked about the different kinds, but now we're going to simplify it. We have a tahara al-badaniyah that pertains to the body and everything, the clothes and all of that. We already also talked about the space, so we don't want to get into it. This is just to simplify it. And hukmiyah, the state. If you're in a state that needs wudu, if you're in a state that needs ghusl, right? So that's important. Also, here, we're not going to get into that with a lot of detail, but so that we can see the connectedness. Do we bury people without tahara? So even that, it becomes important, from that angle. So here, in our focus, we're not going to get into all of the tahara issues because the time is very limited, right? In order for the tahara to be performed, we need water. That's our focus here. We're just looking at the water issue. Or pure dirt. And so water, it has two things, two types of, water has two classifications here, as far as our study. The types of water, right? The types of water and the categories of water by ruling. This is a little confusing, but the reason why we did it like that is because basically can you use the water or not use the water? If that's basically what we're talking about here when we talk about the ruling. And then here we're talking about where did the water come from, right? So we have the types of water according to the source it came from the sky. That's why I did that like that. It's coming down from the sky, and then like this, from the wells and the springs. There's something missing there. What's missing? What's missing? We said wells or spring. Water is where else? Yeah, oceans. So the thing about that is this, that how do we get the meaning ocean? The Quran is what provides the classification for us. The Quran is what's telling us from the sky, from wells or springs. So it comes down, the water comes down. And actually, I learned something a long time ago, which is very interesting. Here in this country, it's really weird sometimes. Because there used to be a song that used to sing, "Rain, rain, go away." You know the song? What's the song? Come again another day. How do we understand rain like in that sense, through that song? Now, like in Turkey, they call rain rahmah. How do we understand rain? Rain from that angle. Blessing. That's an Aqidah issue. That's like sometimes we say, you're lucky.
Even if it's getting in our side too, because it's common over here that okay, it's rain, so you won't be able to do much. Or you have to drive, or you have to, won't be able to do much. Even in our psyche, has gotten into like the rain is bad.
Right? But if you have no rain, you have no water to drink, you have no agriculture, you have no food. That's why the risk is from Allah Ta'ala. Without water, forget it. And that's actually going to be, right now there's so many fights over oil, right, everywhere. All over the earth. But there's other fights for water, taking over the water supplies. Even like these bottling companies, like Nestle, they go into a country, they survey all the water. Or Coca-Cola, they come in. They know where all the water reserves are. So that they come in, pump out, and they sell you back the soda, which gives you diabetes, it gives you cancer, it gives you all of this. So the other issue is like, for instance, some of these companies, they go to the Great Lakes, like the Great Lakes here. They get permission to just pump out water as much as they want. They purify it. This is purified drinking water. This is not spring water. It's not from a spring. But a lot of times the springs may even be contaminated, right? So, but they get to do that. They take the water for free. They sell it back to the people, and they sell you the plastic. And in the meantime, can you open up the faucet and drink from the faucet in places? Yes or no? You go to places like Norway, it's allowable. Because the system believes in purity of the water. In some places, when you don't deal with the environmental issues correctly, the rain issue becomes a problem. Too much pollution. Some cities in the Muslim world, even here, so much pollution. The rain that comes from the sky, it brings down pollution. Acid rain. It destroys the crops and everything like that. So Islam taught us the water issue. Don't waste water. We never some of us in this country was like, well, water is abundant, no problem. Because we don't have the concept of the water shuts off. Right? We didn't have that concept. You have to store the water. It shuts off. We had the concept, you turn on the faucet, water, shh. Then we didn't have the idea that the water's contaminated. Now we have the idea the water's contaminated. When I went to Egypt, I got super sick when I used to live in Egypt. They drank Mad Nile, as they say, the water of the Nile. And it has like a parasite in it, which people get, the ancient parasite. Everybody drinks that because this is expensive. Can't afford it. So it's the same thing when you start talking about, well, there's no water. You can go buy water to get wudu. The people can't afford that. So even though the water is there, it comes back to the issue of you can use tayammum. So if you're going to use the water for wudu, you know what I'm saying? You can't afford the water only to drink or whatever. You can't afford to take a bath with it and cook with it and everything else. But that's it. The water issue is serious. It's not something light to think about. So the Sunnah gives us more details. It talks about the sea. Somebody said that the sea was not included. And it talks about wells in more detail, like wells that have najasa in them. How do you deal with that? But the Quran gives us this insight. Water from the sky, water that comes up from the earth. And it includes the oceans by default. Because the water that comes from the skies and the rivers, everything, it goes back to the sea. So then when we look at water that comes from the sky, they started looking at it with more detail. Well, you have rainwater, you have hail, and then In Chicago, you have snow. So either way, whether hail or snow melted, you can use it for wudu.
So the ocean is salt water, right? So that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, it's okay to use it. Yeah, that's it.
Groundwater that we use here, sometimes it's not so bad. But is it permissible to use?
If it's natural, if it's something that's natural, not something that's, you know,
Right.
if it's not something that's like a chemical problem, contamination and all of that. But if it's natural,
Sometimes in the unincorporated areas you go,
yeah, there's metallic water, yeah.
even you can't even, you know.
In some places it's a serious problem because of other reasons. They're not natural. Like fracking and other things that they do, companies come in, mining companies or whatever do, it contaminates the supply. You have to be careful.
What is metallic water?
So would that be considered as najis if it smells bad?
No, it's not najis. It's like the smell has to be from something that's not natural. So here, you know, when we look, we go back to here's the translation of the Quran, and Allah sent down water upon you from the sky. Remember we said here, we said the types of water from the sky. That comes from the sky too, but you know, here we'll see the issue. So that thereby he may cleanse you. So that's where we get the meaning of tahara from and the issue of water. And then have you not thought about that Allah sends down water from the sky and leads it into springs, into the earth to flow therein? You see the beautiful thing about that? The fiqh is tied into the Quran, is tied into the creation. That's why we took all that time. That a lot of times we don't reflect on that at all. It's just like, for instance, what's your favorite fruit? Any of you? Okay. Do you think when you take the mango, do you think about the fact that it comes from the tree and everything that Allah took to, or do you eat the mango, bismillah? That's it. Which one? Yeah, one of my teachers, may Allah make it easy for him. He said, he said there's something that we should kind of get into the reflection. You take really how the risk came to us. Because if not, then it becomes like, mashallah, peach has the Indian mango at the time, or this store has the Indian mango now, or Pakistani mango. And what happens to the idea of risk? What happens? Did you come from a city or from a village? City. Okay, so you came from a city. Did you see animals in the city?
Back home, yes.
But you have an idea that there's animals, farms, and this and that. Now imagine children growing up only with supermarkets, and they see the meat there packaged in plastic. Do they have a concept of risk, like of everything that goes into that? You know, when a farmer is telling the government, we need some aid from you or whatever, somewhere along the line is like, oh, God, help me. When you just, the farmer or the person that's taking care of the animals, they struggle with that reality. Because, insects can come in or storm can come in, wipe everything out. And so, but, if everything is at the supermarket constantly, you're like, oh, you have no idea of everything else that comes in. Adults, maybe, because you can reflect. That's why the Quran tells us to consider, to reflect upon things so our thinking is straight. If not, then we think it's the supermarket and the companies, they're giving us the risk. And when it doesn't come from them, you know what I'm saying? We're, oh my God, my job. Oh my God, this. Oh my God, the economy. Oh my God. We forget that it's Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, which, you see what I'm saying? We get so worried, we think that everything is in the hand. And to be honest with you, that's the concept, that is not Islamic from the angle of we start to believe that the human beings are the ones that give us rizq. Even the issue of the Dajjal. The concept of the Dajjal is like life and death is in the hand of the Dajjal. Some people go to the extreme with the idea of the Dajjal. Everything is Dajjal. But we go to the extreme where there's no conversation at all about the Dajjal. That's another extreme. Some people, everything is Dajjal. The other people, no conversation about Dajjal. And then Yom al-Jum'ah. Yom al-Jum'ah is supposed to be a time where we reflect upon that reality. We read Surah Al-Kahf. Even though it's not necessary to read it during Jum'ah, but it's practice of the Ummah to read Surah Al-Kahf. But from that idea. So here the hadith, it reaffirms the meaning, it adds meaning, reaffirms the meaning of the Quran, and it adds to us the idea of the seawater, and it gives us some details, right? So we have one hadith by Abu Hurairah, that a man, and this is from the Sunnah, right? So the source of knowledge is Sunnah, in the general sense. Before we talked about the source of knowledge, here the source of knowledge is the Quran. That's what we call a dalil al-ijmali, the dalil in the general sense. But then when we want to go to the specific sense, then now a dalil al-tafsili. Then we go into the ayah. Specific ayah. You see the idea? So then here in the Sunnah is the dalil ijmali, the general evidence, the source. Then now the dalil tafsili, or in detail, is the specific hadith. So one of the things that he mentions is that when it comes to water is pure and it is dead or lawful, right? But he's talking about their seawater. He was asked the question. A man asked the Prophet ﷺ, "O Messenger of Allah, we navigate in the sea and we carry little water with us. If we make ablution or wudu with this water, we will be very thirsty. Can we make wudu with the sea water?" Did the Prophet ﷺ, did he just say yes or no for the answer? What did he do? He explained in detail. Did he give more information than necessary? That here is the role of the mufti. The mufti is not just, you have to educate the people sometimes even more. That's why being a mufti is not easy. Being a mufti is not just reading a book and you just go to the book and, okay, the book says this. Being a mufti, you have to know how to educate the people beyond just the needed information that they ask. If that's, with our children, we have to be able to answer sometimes why. Sometimes we may accept sami'na wa ata'na. Some of us, it's okay. If it's sound knowledge, okay, fine. Islam says that we're okay, right? Some of us are not like that. Some of us, it's not that we're bad. Some of us want to understand. Some of us want to understand. So here in this hadith, the Prophet, he gave us the ruling. It's pure. The water from this is pure. And then other details. That the animals in it are allowable. Now the Hanafis also with this, they have specific issue in which things like shrimp and all of that is not the general tendency in the Hanafi madhab is not eaten. But like for instance in Bangladesh, the muftis and all of that, they said it's okay. But the majority of the schools say it's allowable. Everything from the ocean. The food, the animals of the ocean are allowable to eat. That's for the majority of the scholars. But the Hanafis, they put more detail. And it's true, when you eat shrimp, you shouldn't just eat any shrimp without it being clean and all of that. That type of stuff. The Hanafis, they focus on that part because those animals are the scavengers of the ocean. So here goes. And the Arabic, هو الطهور معه الحل ميت. So there in that hadith, we just covered it in English. I wanted to bring this up because this is the hadith of Abu Hurairah. So that hadith of Abu Hurairah is the one that's known for narrating that hadith. This part of it doesn't give us the whole story. In English, it gave us the story, but this gives us the part that we need for the fiqh. But the hadith is narrated in a bunch of different places. Like in the Musannif of Abi Shayba. That's a book that it categorizes most of the sayings of the companions and stuff like that. The Musannafat, like Musannif Abi Shayba, Musannif Abdul Razak. If you want to go, you find it. And I don't even know if it may be translated into Urdu. Because like when it came to the issue of translating stuff, they did so much stuff in Urdu that is crazy. They translated mostly everything to make it easy for the people. So the most important thing here is that the word tahur, this is why I wanted to focus on that. And tahur, with the fatha over the ta, is the name for water which is purified in itself, which is pure in itself, and is purifying. And it's purifying. You don't have to memorize that, but it's important to know right now, right? If you can memorize it, it's good. Is that the word that's given this name, tahur, it means that it's pure in itself, and you can use it for wudu. You can use it for ghusl. And then the ayah of the Quran here, right? وَيُنَزِّلْ عَلَيْكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ مَا لِيُطَهِّرَكُم بِهِ, right? And then the rest of the ayah is talking about the issue of religious shaitan, right? So here, that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala sent down upon you from the sky rain by which to purify you and remove from you the evil suggestions of shaitan. وَيُثَبَّتَ بِهِ الْأَقْدَامِ. That's important. That with that purification, that we become steadfast in our hearts. That's why the meaning, it's not the meaning of tahara is not just physical. You see here in the Quran is giving us the complete meaning. And He sent down rain from the sky to purify you, free you from the waswas of shaitan, strengthen your hearts and make your steps firm, to establish you in the deen. I just wanted to take one more minute to kind of complete this section. So the book, it talks about that. This is why I did all of that. It gives us the meaning. So now we summarize. Tahara in the Arabic dictionary means purification and cleanliness. As an Islamic terminology, it means purification and cleanliness from physical and spiritual filth or dirt, he says, so that we obtain a state of ritual purity. Muslims start with tahara before performing the prayers. And we already mentioned why. Right? Tahara is the key to the prayers, and it also implies purification of the heart, rejection of wrong beliefs, and the purification of improper morals or bad character. And so then, now from here, we covered this already, that purification uses water, and the sources of that water from the sky, from wells, springs, the ocean. And we mentioned that this hadith, in which the Prophet ﷺ was asked, about the water of the ocean. And then this is another hadith, and this is the hadith of the well of Buda. And here in that well, this well, we're not going to cover it in detail. We're just going to talk about it very brief, and we'll stop because there's a lot of details to this. But in this hadith, what happened with that well is that people, like dead dogs were in it. The cotton in the past that they used to use, or whatever it was that they used for the menses, the women, they would throw it in it. And so the question came up, well, is it pure? And then from there the debate came, regarding the soundness of the hadith, how authentic it is. So they said it's quite authentic. It's not at the highest level, but it's authentic. So they said the water is pure and nothing pollutes it unless what? Colors change, smell change, taste change. But with that exception of what? The exception that we said that if the change comes in the water as far as the smell or even the color from something natural, is acceptable. That's the general rule. And then this, there's like this, the types of waters in that ruling. We already covered this one. Water that's pure in itself and is purified. We have to leave off here because there's too much stuff. Any questions before we shut down? Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin.